Good morning. Can I tell you how much I don't want to make this video? I put off making this video for probably about a day or so, and I've prayed over it, I've cried over it, and it is what it is. So it's testimony time. In one of my previous videos, I had told you that I had been married before and divorced, but what I didn't tell you was that I have been married and divorced 3 times. And one of the reasons that I do not like to talk about this is because of the look of judgment that comes across other people's faces when I talk about it. As people get to know me, people will develop the confidence to ask me, why are you divorced? And I take that as a compliment because it's like, we know you, why are you single? But they put singleness on me like it's a curse, right? Like, why have you been cursed with singleness? And then when I tell people that I was divorced, that I am divorced, and then they ask the inevitable, well, how many times have you been married? And I tell them I've been married 3 times. They get this look of, oh, almost like they're second guessing themselves about whether or not they have judged my character properly. And quite honestly, I have just gotten tired of being judged for my past. And so I don't really like to talk about it. And God says, that stops. And so if you find yourself in a place where you feel not enough, unworthy, because of your mistakes in your past, I want you to know that that stops, that you need to go to God and you need to talk to God about this, and you need to do what God tells you to do about those situations. I'm not going to offer a lot of solutions, but what I am going to do is tell you what happened in my life so that maybe this might help someone else. In my first marriage, I had said in a previous video that I felt like I had done everything right. I was active in church. I was a Christian. I married someone who I believed to be a Christian. We went through premarital counseling in the church. We were not sexually active before we got married. I was a virgin when I got married. And so I felt like I had taken all the steps that I needed to take in order to make sure that this person was the right person for me. And over the years, after that marriage ended, I looked back and I honestly looked everyone in the eye and told them I could not see any red flags that would tell me that marriage would end in divorce. Like, I honestly could not figure it out. And then recently, over 20 years later, it occurred to me that very, very, very slowly, I was pulling away from the church. I was pulling away from God. I was pulling away from my friends. Like, I had taught Sunday school at one point in time, and I didn't feel like I was very good at that. I didn't feel like I was qualified anyway. And so when time came to get married, instead of pulling my husband into that, I excused myself from it, kind of saying that my husband and I would attend Sunday school together and we wanted to, learn together. That was my excuse. So instead of pulling him in and making him a part of what I was doing, I was actually using him as an excuse to get further from my responsibilities. And so I resigned as Sunday school teacher. And then there were some issues within the church that I did not agree with amongst the congregation. And so I used that as an excuse to be hurt by the church and to just stop going altogether. And the more and more, like very, very slowly, the more I pulled away, the worse my marriage got. And then during premarital counseling, he was not very vocal about what he thought. He just kind of was going with the flow, like, yeah, I understand, yeah. And so it was all what would seem very minor at the time. But in retrospect, it was not what it should have been. And it was slowly, very methodically pulling me away from the church and pulling me away from my relationship with God. Now, was that the church that I should have been in? I don't know. But we could have gone to any other church. We could have still kept in touch with our friends from that church, where there were no wounds. You know what I'm saying? So I feel like the more I was pulled out of that situation, the worse my marriage got. And I wanted to play the victim in that relationship. I wanted to say, this is what he did. This is what this is how he hurt me. And he did hurt me. He did take steps that I feel like released me from my vows. But I took steps too that didn't release him from his vows, but that I'm sure hurt him. If he were to give his testimony, I'm sure I acted out of character and I reacted in an inappropriate way. And so it just all was a perfect storm of disaster. And we did not turn back to God together. I chose to say, you have released me from my vows. You have become disinterested in this marriage. This is not my place anymore. This is not where I need to be. And I left. And I think we were both immature. And that's one thing that I want you to really look at when it comes to healing from a relationship, And when you are looking at a prospective relationship, one thing that God has really highlighted for me is when you're asking someone else questions about their past, ask them this question specifically. You have told me what the other person has done wrong in the relationship, but what have you done wrong in your past relationships? What responsibility, what accountability have you taken in your relationships? What could you have done better? Because if people, it takes two to tango, but very, very rarely is it 100% one person's blame. And I'll give you another example. Okay, so after husband number one, I was very mad. I was very angry at God because I was like, I feel like I did everything right? I didn't see the red flags. I didn't understand what had gone wrong. It just went downhill very quickly, and I just couldn't understand. I didn't want divorce in my life. I knew how painful that was. I came from divorced, parents, and my childhood was very confusing for me. Getting pushed and pulled between two households, and I did not want that. I was angry at God. I was like, this doesn't work. Like, I don't understand this, but what I have learned from that, I strayed from God after that relationship. And I probably strayed from God for probably 15 to 20 years, somewhere in the middle of that. And I'm not proud of that, okay? And I'm not proud of the choices that I made after that. But one thing that I will say about God is he uses our hurt, and he uses our, the choices that we make, and he redeems us from those things. When I met my second husband, or the person who's to be my second husband, I found out while we were dating that I had a health scare. And this man, I was not afraid to tell him anything. I told him all about my first marriage. I told him how I felt like I was a victim in that relationship, what my first husband had done to me, all these things. And he helped me very much to see things from a different perspective. And he very much helped me to heal a lot of that. And I feel like God helped me heal through him. He was very patient while we dated, and he was very patient during the time that we were married. And we talked about everything, every single thing under the sun. I think I took this relationship for granted because we did talk about anything and everything. I just felt like if anything had bothered him, he would come to me with it. So that was lesson number 2, right? Don't take anything for granted. Don't take people for granted. Don't just assume that because it's always this way, that it's always going to be that way. So I assumed that because we always communicated, that we would always communicate. And the reason I say that is because you never know what wounds someone else is harboring deep down inside. And I did not realize that while he was helping me to heal and become stronger, he had wounds of his own that were not healing. And I had gotten a job promotion that had taken me out of the house a lot, that left him alone a lot. And he did not tell me until it was too late to save the marriage that he was tired of being alone. And he left me. And so he made some assumptions, I made some assumptions. And I am not saying that it was right for him to leave me because of a job. And I am not saying that I am a victim because he didn't communicate. I am saying that we are both to blame. That I take responsibility because I did not communicate to him. I accepted the job without talking to him about it. And I just assumed that if there was ever a problem to come up, that he would talk to me. So while I didn't talk to him, I'm expecting him to talk to me. And that was wrong. Was it wrong enough to leave me over? No. But it was still wrong. And I'm sure it was very hurtful. And in turn, he did a hurtful thing as well, which was leave me for several months with no communication whatsoever. Now, after the divorce, and that was something that I could not get over. I could not trust him after that because I had trusted him so completely and so blindly that I never in a million years thought that he would ever leave me. I thought, this is my forever person. But we were not purposefully trying to hurt each other, even though that's exactly what we did. So I think that lesson for me was not to take people for granted and to always communicate. Don't act like you're single when you're married. And that relationship took me down. And it took me down for 10 years. It took me down for a long, long time. And then my third marriage. My third marriage, by the time I came around to my third marriage, marriage was not for me the same. It was companionship, but it was not how I had envisioned it to be. It did not have the same standard for me that it did in the beginning, in the first marriage. It was not the covenant that I held it to be in the first marriage. The person that I married the third time was not Christian. He was of a different religion. And I will tell you, his family was the kindest family you would ever meet. If you ever wanted to be in the most kindest, giving, charitable, generous family, that's the family to be in. And so I believe that God protected me. I married a Muslim man who was the black sheep of his family, who did not think that it was necessary for me to convert to his religion, who did not require me to participate in his religion, who treated me very kindly, I had members of my family who were concerned that he abused me physically, and he did not lay a hand on me ever. His family was very generous to me. He had this seemingly mutual understanding for each other and patience with each other that I can't explain. That God protected that situation. I, even to this day, don't understand. The point was that we were not of the same religion. We were not equally yoked. That marriage, from a spiritual perspective, should have never have been. And ultimately, we both were just seeking companionship. And we had a friendship that nobody understood, but we understood. But that's pretty much all that it was. We had, a mutual love of each other. But I look at it more as friendship, because at that point in time, I was very jaded against marriage. And for me, it just didn't have the same meaning that it had from the first marriage. Ultimately, I believe that he had a problem that I could not live with. And I gave him an ultimatum of me or that problem. And he chose the problem because he refused to believe that he had a problem. And so that is why we got divorced. And my blame in that relationship is that I married someone who was not in my faith. And I married someone that I knew probably in the beginning had a problem. And I married him anyway. Now that I have come back to God and asked for forgiveness and restarted my relationship with God, I struggle a lot with overthinking the past. And God has given me some answers to some of the things that I've thought about. And one of the things that he has talked to me about and shown me is this idea of idolizing marriage and idolizing the status of being married. And that is more than likely what I was doing. That I was too busy loving the idea of being in love and not busy enough preparing. And then as time went on, as I got further away from God, I got further away from what marriage actually means and what being a wife actually means. And more importantly, what being a godly wife actually means. I'm reminded that we hear God best in the whisper, in the quiet. And I'm reminded that it's usually in the subtleness, in the subtleties is where the lessons come. And I think it's in the subtleties that where the warnings come. I'm also reminded of John chapter 15, starting at verse 1, where Jesus says, I am the true vine and my Father is the gardener. He cuts off every branch in me that bears no fruit, while every branch that does bear fruit he prunes, so that it will be even more fruit. You are already clean because of the word I have spoken to you. Remain in me, and I will remain in you. No branch can bear fruit by itself. It must remain in the vine. Neither can you bear fruit unless you remain in me. So it says no branch can bear fruit by itself. It must remain in the vine. And then at verse 1, he says, I am the true vine. And so what Jesus is saying is you must stay connected to him. Otherwise, you cannot bear the fruit of the Spirit. You cannot have success. I would say you cannot succeed as God defines it. And so if you don't stay connected to Jesus, if you don't stay connected to the Spirit, then your endeavors will not succeed. And so, for example, in the first marriage, as I was preparing to get married, and I was starting to pull away from God, and I couldn't see that. I didn't recognize that. And if I could, I was maybe unwilling to see it because I was so focused on the wedding. I was so focused on being married. I was so focused on being a good wife that to my future husband, that I wasn't keeping my eye on God and I wasn't staying in the Spirit. And things that were kind of happening during the wedding preparation that were kind of like perking my ears a little bit, that were like piquing my intuition a little bit, that I was kind of like, really? Like, you just said that? Or really, you want things to happen this way? I thought I was being a bridezilla, right? I thought I was trying to control things, and I thought I just needed to lighten up. But that's not really, at that time, I'm not sure that's really what it was. I'm not really sure that's who I was. And then I got angry. I want to say I got angry at God, but what I really think is anytime we get angry at God, I think we blame him when it's misplaced anger. We're really angry at ourselves because we recognize that we made mistakes. And then we go, God, how could you let us do this? And it's like, well hold the phone, Leroy. Like, how can you blame God when God was trying to warn you? When God was like perking your ears up and saying, pay attention to that statement that he just made, like that your future husband just made. Pay attention to what your future husband wants to do during the wedding. And you don't like that. Like, are y'all really in alignment? Do y'all need to go back and talk about this some more? And then the angrier I got and the more disappointed I got in God, the further away from him I got. And of course, the further away you get, like the more disconnected from the vine you get, right? the more you like cut yourself off from that vine, how can you expect anything else to succeed after that? So of course, marriages 2 and 3 were going to fail because I didn't ask God about them. I just went and did it myself. And so if you want anything to succeed, it doesn't have to be relationships. You have to listen. But I really am getting that it's not just this big booming voice that comes down and says, don't do that. It's in the little things too. And the little things really do matter. Like people will say, you know, this person knows how I like my coffee, and I love that so much. And that's a little thing. The little things matter. But the little things matter in the warnings as well. They don't just matter for the good. They matter for the warnings as well. And so you have to pay attention for all the things, not just the good things, but the bad things, or what we perceive to be the bad things as well. So when your ears perk up, when you kind of get this little kind of feeling, investigate that more. Is it fear because like the devil is putting fear into your heart because this really is the path you're supposed to go down, and Satan's just going, hey, you've been here once, you don't want to do this again? Or is that God trying to say, hold that, watch that, listen to that, this is a warning? And that's something that you will need to pray on and to really investigate, to really take your time. There's no rush. And I don't feel that I rushed with the first marriage. I feel like we did take our time. I think we dated for like 3 years before we got married. And then I was also brought to Psalm 103. And this is a psalm of praise. Starting with verse 1, praise the Lord, O my soul. All my inmost being, praise his holy name. Praise the Lord, O my soul, and forget not all his benefits, who forgives all your sins and heals all your diseases, who redeems your life from the pit and crowns you with love and compassion, who satisfies your desires with good things so that your youth is renewed like the eagles. The Lord works righteousness and justice for all the oppressed. And that was Psalm 103, verses 1 through 6. And so what I have to say about this is God is the great Redeemer. So no matter what mistakes you think you have made, no matter how badly you think you have messed up your life, God can redeem you. In verse 3, it says, who forgives all your sins and heals all your diseases. Verse 4, who redeems your life from the pit and crowns you with love and compassion. So if you feel like you're in a pit right now, if you feel like you just can't crawl out, turn to God. Tell him everything. Lay it all at his feet. Ask him to help you. And it may not be telling the world what you've done wrong. This may not be for you. It may be something else. But your testimony is your testimony for a reason. And I really hope that this helps someone, because I have watched so many videos lately in the past couple of days where, and they're well-meaning videos, right? Where it's like trying to show you where God will help you and they will turn any bad situation into a good situation, and how they will help any bad situation become a lesson for you to do better in the future. And I believe that. But a lot of times these videos also help you to think that you're a victim of circumstance, that you're a victim of your choices, and that you didn't do anything wrong, that this just happened to you. And why did God allow this to happen to you? And what I want you to understand is you made a decision. And I'm going to hold your hand while I tell you this. But you have to accept responsibility and accountability for the decisions that you made. Because if God was showing you in some way that this was the wrong choice and you did it anyway, even if you didn't recognize that it was the wrong choice, but God still showed it to you, then it was still the wrong choice. Then you still have to take responsibility and accountability for the wrong decision that you made. So think back. What were the red flags? What were the warnings? What was God trying to show you? And are you still blaming God for a choice that you made? Are you displacing your anger and your disappointment on God when really you're angry and disappointed with yourself and with the other person?